the Economic Development Authority meeting, Tuesday, December 19th, 2023, Montrose City Hall. Roll call.
Kirby Moynihan.
Jackie Hens.
Sonia Truitt. Jessica Vineland.
David Paradise. Approval of the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
A second.
All in favor? Aye. Approval of the minutes, October 17th, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Treasurer's report.
The current Economic Development Authority fund is at $263,970.36, and the revolving loan is at $257,754.78.
Any questions?
I'll make a motion to accept the treasurer's report.
There's
Not moved.
no company on this one.
We got old business, new members discussion. So we are down to now 3 of us, with Matt unfortunately having to leave. I know you reached out to Gordon's. Sounds like there's some interest there.
There's some interest from 12 meets, and I'm working on getting some contact from CCC to see who would fill that role, and if they're still interested in sending somebody. I think it's still up in the air who would handle that at this point. So I'm working on trying to figure that out of if they're still interested. But other than that, or 12 meets, I don't know if anybody else would be interested, or if there's any other businesses that we've had conversations with. But do you think the bank would be at all interested in joining again? So,
I can ask. I don't know for sure. But I'll
Because
talk
who
to Joel.
was it before that did it? Patrick.
Patrick, yep.
Mhm. I will ask both of them. I can't say anything.
Yeah.
It has to be Joel because Justin's more of the other. I don't know that Joel has the bandwidth.
Right.
But I will ask the people there. Everybody else is a no-go.
Yeah, there hasn't been any interest in the past when we've asked any of the auto repair companies.
We do have that new thrift shop that just opened up. I'll ask them if they're what opportunities we'd have with them. Yeah, outside of that, pretty much tapped.
Yeah.
So moving forward, gotta be us 3. So yeah, I would say we'll only give both of them a little bit of time to open up before they really can give us a true answer on that. But
So what's the requirement to be a member? A business person, or can it be somebody who's not a business person? Or
I think we'd have to look at the bylaws, but I thought it said 3 businesses in Montrose and 2 council members in our bylaws.
not necessarily have to be the business owner, just have to be somebody representing the business.
I believe so. I think that's how we set it up, right? It's been a long time
If it was based on bylaws, it would be a couple of council members, and then they would just have to be residents. Would be what would qualify in if it was a statutorily created EDA, it would take that. If you have more of an economic development committee, you know, you could choose however you make up that board, so. I'd have to look at those actors, it's been a couple of years, so.
Yeah. That's all I have.
Alright. We'll move forward to the new business, the preserve TIF request.
We also have, one of the attorneys from Kennedy Graven, Ron, he's been working with Shannon and me on, some of the TIF stuff, and he'll be helping prepare the agreement, between the developer and the city.
All right, let's walk through it a little bit, and we have the developer here, which is even better, so would you guys want to present your project first, or do you want me to dive in, what's your preference?
We're here for questions, answer any concerns.
I'll dive in. Ultimately, the project consists of building out the plat of the preserve, which would be 174 units. Ultimately, the developers indicated 3 phases for the project, including the first phase of 36 lots, and then 2 phases of approximately 69 lots. Ultimately, their request is based on applying the logic that their current estimate for building a unit would cost about $290,000 per unit, and they think they would have some difficulty in selling that in the current market to folks that meet the income requirements that are going to be imposed on them. And ultimately, they wanted to try to reach a target price of closer to $250,000. When you factor in time value of money, that turns into roughly an $8 million request for reimbursement of property tax. And as I mentioned in my letter, if they develop at a pace of 12 lots a year and tax rates and market values remain consistent with what they are today, we would expect that we could reach that threshold, but it would take the life of the TIF district to do it, which is 26 years. During that time, the income restrictions that are imposed by TIF would be in place the entire duration. Ultimately, as it is a phased project, I've recommended in my letter that we probably look at it as a phased subsidy, because the investments are incurring at different periods of time, and it's based on a pace of development. And Ron and I discussed it briefly, and I think he was on the same page. We have difficulty in providing a subsidy on something that's yet undetermined on when it would be built and implemented, because when we have performance standards, they tend to be pretty specific. But developer, to make it absolutely clear, the developer wanted to try to negotiate this in one fell swoop for the entire development, so that he doesn't have to come back to the EDA and city council, which I understand why they would like to not have to do that. Ultimately, the process would be, if you decided to proceed, my feeling is always that we have some basic understanding of the parameters of the deal, that both parties have some form of agreement on. You know, if the city's position is that it's a phased subsidy and that we're negotiating a pay-as-you-go contract, which is the reimbursement of property taxes for the first phase, you know, then that's what's the reimbursement associated with that is what's determined at this point, and we decide if we're willing to proceed under that, and we find out whether the developer is willing to proceed under those terms. If not, you know, then there's more discussion that has to occur in order to negotiate something that's appropriate for both parties. So happy to answer questions, but at the end of the day, if anybody has questions on TIF itself, I'm happy to answer those. Essentially, we'd be reimbursing the new property taxes that are generated as a result of the new construction that would be undertaken. The obligation to the developer would be to only reimburse those taxes actually paid by property owners within the TIF district, collected by the county, returned to the city, and then reimburse the developer if there's any breaks in that string, meaning if somebody doesn't pay property taxes, there's no reimbursement. So from that perspective, the city's not putting out a whole bunch of cash with hopes of return. They're simply reimbursing property taxes that are paid as a result of eligible projects being constructed. So, what questions can I answer?
What's the typical length of time you see for the TIF agreements? Is it the 26 or is it typically 15 to 20?
It's typically been 15 to 20, but we are in and have been in some unique circumstances of late. Most of the rental housing development that we were seeing in the formative stages has been put on pause because of interest rates and construction costs. And so I'm not surprised by the request for a longer duration given current conditions. And my thought is that if we have some sense of optimism that things will improve, a phased subsidy approach may make more sense. Conditions may be improved by the time you invest in the infrastructure in the next phase, where the subsidy request isn't, essentially $40,000 a lot plus interest to carry that. And at that time, we could revisit it, and if conditions persisted, we could look at, the pay-as-you-go contract that would occur at that time. The benefit to the developer is that, let's say the first phase struggles for a little while, for example, and we get 9 years into it before they have build out and they're interested in doing the subsequent phase. At that time, we've burned through probably at least 7 years of TIF because the clock starts ticking when we create the district. And at that point, we could look at creating a second district over the remaining vacant property, which would reset that clock. It's a benefit in case things languish and it takes longer to develop the project. On the other hand, if you're going like gangbusters, you could probably just soon keep that momentum pushing right through, I would imagine. But to answer Kirby's question though, we typically don't see a subsidy on new construction on essentially vacant land for 26 years. I understand the request based on current conditions because interest rates are high, construction costs are still high. And again, in my experience, we're seeing projects put on pause unless they had some real positive things, momentum behind them to make them push through regardless. But that usually means high value, high end stuff.
Taking a look at it, I mean, yeah, to your point, I think the subsidy would work best in this situation, so that we're not setting a clock here and having guys, better, good luck on the 26 years to get it done, kind of a thing. I mean, hopefully it's obviously done within 26 years, but I think re-looking at it, looking at the situation, hopefully next year the rates come down is what they're saying, but we don't know. So I mean, I think that looking at it project by project, phase by phase, I think is the best solution if we're going to do something like that. What are your thoughts on that, Kirby?
So then the TIF district will only cover the area of land of the 60, of the 36?
No, if we created one, it would be over the whole project area, because if they were going like gangbusters, we would avoid the process of having to do that again. Mm-hmm. To take it out of the TIF district and create a new TIF district, it's essentially a resolution of council saying we're removing these parcels, and ultimately we would go through a similar process to create a new TIF district at that time over the remaining vacant parcels. And it's something that's occurred with some frequency on large projects where the time frame for implementation is tough to nailed down. So doing industrial parks, housing projects, it just happens that way. Now, I understand from the city's perspective that makes more sense to do phased approach. We still have to have some assurance from the developer that what we're proposing works for the developer, he's willing to proceed, and so we need that input as well.
What was the, say the question again? Sorry. As you're looking at me, so
I'm a little confused. I just want to be clear and make sure I understand. So the TIF district would be created for the entire project.
Yeah.
But then we would be evaluating the financial performer on a phase-by-phase basis and reevaluating the TIF layout, if you will? Is that?
We would be negotiating a pay-as-you-go contract for the first 36 lots that you're bringing to market. And so the reimbursement would be based on the subsidy necessary to make those 36 lots work.
And just the 36, not the entire project.
Because you haven't invested in developing the entire project
Right.
at that point.
Understood.
some. I mean, we're okay. Like I said this, I think a few years ago when I was in this meeting and someone else had it under contract and we were going to be the builders potentially. You know, we want to be here. We're excited. We're probably one of the largest builders in Wright County, but we've made our business on kind of more on the a little bit more outskirts, and we like working with those type just in those areas and those people. But we want to figure out whatever we can do to make it work. From the infrastructure standpoint, we will have some upfront ones that will actually be over the whole community that won't. You know, I don't know how. Shannon had some ideas on how to put that into the first phase. I think that maybe help. It's compared to regular development. When we start greenfield, it would be maybe it could be quadruple a cost versus what it is. So sure. I mean, there is some benefit, there is some positive things like that. It's hard to I had a bunch of conversations with Shannon just to help me get the information that he needed. And one thing that's obviously very clear is that we don't know what next week is going to do, let alone, you know, a year or two from now. If rates go down, lumber goes up. So it might not be beneficial for us if rates go down. Potentially, it offsets. Usually, usually. I mean, not perfectly, and it comes and goes, and no one knows, and so it's something that's good news could be actually bad news. So we have to look at what we just think of like a normal scenario is going to be. What is normal? We have to come up with something and just try to be as close to that as possible and be really good. If we're not good, we won't be successful, but we believe we're good enough to do it. So I do think it is. I told Shannon maybe in an email, I said, I don't like the thought of having it not all done up front because if we get, there's a couple different members in that will just say don't like development for some reason or something, all of a sudden we're all the way half in and we've kind of established, and then we just get our legs taken from us because in the beginning it won't be worth it for us doing this like at all. It's never in the beginning, it's kind of at the end. However, do I think we're the right builder and developer for this project? Do I think someone else will want it? Probably not. So I don't think there's much benefit for the city to take it away if we're doing a good job. So like we're pretty, you know, just having a kind of a meeting of the minds, and if we both enjoy working with each other, we would like to try to figure out how to make the next phases work too.
Is there any type of protections that can be put into place, like if everything's been met and the next phase is in, like is there, so like to his point, like if it's a brand new council, brand new EPA,
I think how he's protected is if, you know, we're willing to provide reimbursement for costs that he's sinking now that don't translate into the initial 36 units. So if we're agreeing to reimburse over a significant term for more than just the 36 lot cost for the additional investment that he has, recognize he's not building out the other, 140 lots, 138 lots, but he is investing costs that benefit those lots. And if we're reimbursing for that, I think think that puts him in a fair position, you know, to have a long-term subsidy based on this first phase of construction that, you know, at least makes it palatable for him to proceed at this point and likely gives him a good head start on the next phase when that comes along. Does that sound?
We can't plan for like worst case scenario all the time, you know, it's kind of like a risk reward thing. So,
Yeah, I've not typically seen a city that gets mad when a developer's making hay and really knocking out
Yeah,
housing units.
yeah,
Usually
yeah.
they're, you know, wanna continue to be partners because
100%
we're all
for sure.
being
Yeah,
successful.
for sure.
I
So
agree.
it's when there's only a couple sitting out there 10 years from now that everybody's.
Yeah, we're very motivated to keep it going. I mean, in the beginning, you might not make much money per unit, and that's just kind of development. And then again, it's a long term for us, you know. And so like, we will be very motivated to get a lot of units in, as long as the market somewhat supports it, at least.
Any sense for what that initial reimbursement might look like, or do you wanna put a pencil to that some more?
Or would maybe know more of that, but
I'd
you,
have to look at that, but I mean, there's the two biggest upfront costs, well, there's three really, but the first is insignificant in the total picture, but we've probably invested $25,000 already just in testing the existing utilities that are in the ground that were installed when the project was originally developed. So we had a crew out there over the last couple of weeks checking the sanitary sewer lines, checking, pressurizing the water. Good news is a lot of it tested out and I think we can use it. But we had to spend some money to get that due diligence work done. But the other two big upfront cost components are the directional bore under Highway 12 to connect the water to the system, which is on the north side of 12. That's $125,000 or so. And then there's another $125,000 approximately in constructing a right turn lane. So if you're traveling easterly on 12, we have to build a right turn lane coming into the development. So those have to go in up front for the first 36 lots. So as Josh said, that cost, you know, we amortize over all the lots, but pay for it right after they get it out.
There's that, and then there's just plain the value right down, so we wanna, that I think you're looking for, that's a significant part of the subsidy request. So, we'll want you to put a pencil to it and give us a number.
There is some pavement that was, you know, installed back in the day. All that has to come out and be reinstalled. So we probably have to pave a little further than where our first 36 lots are, just for fire protection, turnaround, storage of materials, those sorts of things. So those are, again, some of the upfront costs that we spend to get the first 36 lots into where product development, of course, internal overhead expenses, build the product and do all those sorts of things, but invest in a model building. We have a couple of furnished models. All those are upfront investments that typically spread over every home, but in this case, I guess we'd have to tailor it to the first 36, and then we'll figure out the math from there. I don't know if it makes sense to revisit the 36 lots, if that's the right phase, or if we should maybe go a third. Instead of the unit count, then we can talk to you, I guess, offline on that, if that helps.
I thought that was the investment you were targeting to dip your toe in the water.
Yeah.
Was the 36.
I feel if we have, I think the 36 will allow us to get in there, because if we do it too small, which you weren't suggesting, I think you were suggesting the opposite, but if you do it too small, like it'll be more costly actually, so we don't want to go smaller than that. If we go bigger, I think the 36 will give us enough room that if we start hitting pace, or if we start getting like a little bit more interest than we expected, we could probably get the other 36 pretty quickly, just as long as we don't get any really big pushback on the TIF or something the city changes. Art is really good, and we got good contractors that are out in this area. They're going to be excited to put another phase in. You know, we'll have to time it out, and then you have to deal with the winter. You know, so it's brutal usually, but you know, I think that we would be able to plan that ahead with
And I understand if it's something that happens more quickly, we're not creating another tax increment district. We're negotiating another development agreement. It doesn't require a public hearing. It's something that could be presented to council at a meeting, and we can
Yeah.
comes up with them, so.
Okay, yeah, that's helpful, that from a timeline perspective, that's helpful for sure.
So all the agreements and proffers would be in the developer agreement in the first phase, and then we would just
We'd
morph that
replicate
into
it.
that,
Yep.
into the future developer agreement phases. Yeah, that's fine. We wouldn't have to go back to council, with the exception of the economics. The district would be created, so that would be decided and done
Yes.
forever, for 26 years, right?
Yes.
We would just be working out the math for what
Yes,
the tax increment is on the future basis.
That's
Okay,
correct.
that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know necessarily where everybody else would be at for 26 years. I think probably be looking maybe closer to the 20, but I think that I'm okay with the TIF district at this point, but I would want to know the reimbursement side of it, before we really get too far ahead on anything else, just to make sure we're in the same ballpark, so to say, and everything.
they'll give me a number, I'll do a TIF projection on just the 36 units. We'll see how long that takes to amortize under different rates of development, and we'll decide if it's appropriate. That works, Mayor.
And I'll just say from my personal perspective, I'd like this to be long term. I don't want you guys wanting it done with preserve. I think there's opportunities here, there's land here, if we can find, a good relationship moving forward, that's kind of what, I think the city wants.
We actually have a TIF project in Howard Lake going right now, and that will be winding up here, and we have a site maybe Waverly so it helps us having a couple other sites that even have, if this ends up being a little lower volume, we can still survive and keep it going. Because we'll be around here a lot. At the same point, our goal is not just to survive, just to barely make it go.
Yeah.
Isn't our goal either.
Yeah. Sorry. I just kind of think of worst case scenario. But we're out here already, and we're familiar with this, and we're familiar with this buyer and this price point, so we can handle it. It's tough. It's really difficult in these times with everything being so crazy expensive, but we're decent at it. So.
Process-wise for creating the tax increment district, I would recommend that the district is created by the city council. Ultimately, it's a hearing. It's initiated by a resolution calling for that hearing. At that meeting where you would call for the hearing, we would have that final number from you folks. We would look at the amortization of that, or how long it takes for the TIF to potentially pay off that reimbursement amount, given a specific set of, basically it's a pace of development. How many houses per year does it take in order to pay that off in X number of years? And both of us are relying on that assumption, so, that's an important number to settle on. And if we are all nodding our heads and ready to proceed, council would call for that hearing. It would be about 60 days out, because there's notification to the county and school district that has to take place. That notification period is almost that whole period of time. And so at the end of the day, that hearing gets set. We're drafting a tax increment plan. Ron is working on a TIF agreement at that same time, and we're circulating both documents to make sure that it represents what everybody's understanding of the deal is. Once we have the hearing, following the hearing, the council's asked to adopt the TIF district and authorize execution of the subsidy agreement. So if we initiate that in January, in March, if there's a second meeting in March, we're probably looking at scheduling a hearing for that date.
Does it go right to council, or planning commission and council, or right to council?
If there's a planning commission approval, all it is that the development's consistent with the comprehensive plan, which is housing, and I assume it's already zoned for housing. So that finding should be difficult. So basically stays in the hands of the council. We would want a recommendation from this group, you know, to the council, which can be done simultaneously, examining the terms of the deal and letting the council know your thoughts on whether you feel it's appropriate to proceed. That makes sense?
With the time, of 60-day notice and likely hearing in March, we're gonna go beyond our contract, due diligence period as it's written today. Right now, and Jessica, I've had some emails about this. Right now, I believe we expire the 29th of January, but we have one 30-day extension, so that takes it to leap year this year, February 29th. So if we go into March, our contract expires, so we would just need to do an extension, which we could prepare and I could send to you, Jessica, to give us that extra time so we still have control of the property while we're in March. Otherwise, we don't have a contract technically.
When's the first meeting in January? I'll put together a calendar and see if we could. It's probably gonna be a March meeting. But we'll see if we can squeeze it in before the end, but it's probably gonna be a March meeting.
Okay.
And then after that meeting, is there any other timelines after the March? No, so then we can, because that is, I'm pretty sure, I don't know, if you want to speak for Art, is you would want, we'd be preparing mill up the streets and start right in the spring, depending on when freeze out is done.
Yeah, it's kind of the chicken and the egg, so we don't want to sign contracts with all the contractors and line them up, but they're gonna be looking for commitments for spring.
In January.
Right, yeah, so we wanna make sure we have our resources lined up, but until we have the vote and everything's official, it's always, you know, you're kind of walking that line.
If the council's initiating this process on January 8th, we should be presenting them with enough information where at their March meeting, they're comfortable approving everything because things shouldn't change.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's how we're intending to present this, so.
Understood, we can work with it. So I'll prepare an amendment to the purchase agreement, giving us, I don't know, 45 or 60 days, enough time to make sure we get through all the regulatory and the developer. We have, you know, once all the council things are done, then the back office work starts with the developer agreement and all those kind of.
How does the developer
details.
agreement work when we already have a final plat?
Asking the wrong guy.
Oh, okay.
Well,
You already know.
Well,
the
there's
question.
currently a developer agreement recorded against the property
Yeah.
done by the original developer, but, you know, fees and most of the fees have already been paid and so forth, but all the covenants that we're gonna commit to for landscaping and billing and all those
Yeah.
details, the TIF, all that would be restated and it would be brought current
Okay.
with the current parties, right?
Yeah, makes sense. Okay.
So we'll be able to work with the city attorney on that.
Okay.
Maybe we can, typically in most cities, we run that concurrently with the approvals process, so that when we get to the end, we've got it pretty darn close to be signable and ready to record us pay the fees or whatever the things are that we have to do to actually have an official agreement that can get recorded and we can actually start working, you know, so, we know how to do all that stuff.
Any other questions on this? So we'll get some new numbers put down.
Yeah.
Be able to, bring some of this forward to January, at least to get the, notification out at the council meeting.
Yes.
What's the EDA's next meeting date?
That one is the 16th.
So, for the January 8th council packet, we'd have a resolution calling a hearing on the creation of the TIF district. For the January 16th EDA meeting, we'd have basically a term sheet laid out of what the deal structure looks like for recommendation from the EDA. With that, Ron and I would be drafting. If Ron's drafting the agreement, I'm creating a TIF plan and working with council to put everything in place beginning of March.
Just to clarify what you need from us, Shannon, so for the numbers, you need somewhat of a development budget that's phased, so that we account for those upfront costs that we were talking about earlier.
I wanna know what your TIF request is for phase one and some itemization of that.
That's as simple as kind of going through what we already submitted and just making sure nothing's different from
I
that.
think so.
It did cause us a little bit of an issue thinking of it so far out
Yep.
with so many lots, and that was what was
Yep.
probably the most difficult. So chunking it down should actually be easier from us.
I was hoping so.
I think.
But you've already provided the information.
Exactly.
It's-
We already did the hard part basically, so I think I follow. If I have any questions, I'll just
Yep.
call you or email you, yeah.
Anything else?
Ron, we missing anything?
No, I've been listening carefully. I don't disagree with anything. I think, the plans, as Shannon's, specified, trying to have everything come together at the same meeting, presumably in March, I think is a good idea. I think, a simple extension of the purchase agreement for the reasons that were explained is gonna be necessary. That'll give us the time to work off of. No use sort of artificially having to constrain ourselves to February 29th. I think this should all play out pretty well.
We did get a jump start on, kind of in good faith, we got a jump start on the testing, like you said, so that won't hang us up in the spring too. So we can plan with the contractors ahead of time, we know what's gonna happen. We knew if we waited to the spring, it would push us out to the summer if we got this done, so it's kind of a risk. But I think it was a good thing to do.
Well, if nothing else.
Good.
Good. All right, well, that's it. Next meeting is Tuesday, January 16th, 2024, 12 p.m., Montrose City Hall. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I'll make motion
Before
to
you
adjourn.
adjourn, I was wondering if I could have a minute to do a quick update.
Yes.
100%,
Okay,
absolutely.
sorry, I haven't
No,
been
you're
here for
good.
a few months.
Yeah.
Just a reminder, I'm Jolene Foss, I'm the Executive Director of the Wright County Economic Development Partnership. And I just thought I'd let you know in the last, since August, so about 4.5, 5 months, we have been contacted and worked with 17 potential new businesses that are looking to open up in Wright County. At least half of them have opened, and 5 have requested the revolving loan fund information. So oftentimes the request for revolving loan fund is for retail or service, not for industrial, so that ends up not being an alignment, but we have had a lot of interested parties. The partnership has received 2 new members of our group, that's Cargill and Bridgewater College, so that's very exciting. We have the Workforce Pathways Committee has asked to present education information to the 9 school districts here in Wright County, so I've been to 7th through 12th grade classes, and I have educated over 850 students just since August. So we talk about existing businesses here in Wright County. We encourage them to go check out our Workforce Pathways Wheel, which is a digital tool, and they can see what's already existing here. Encourage them to work and live and stay in Wright County. We participated, represented with 5 county EDA groups, 10 chambers of commerce. We had a summit, a couple of them with them. We've worked with Greater MSP for some large potential development proposals, and the Initiative Foundation is a child care specialist, which Montrose was also involved with, the child care specialist in First Children's Finance, I believe. We've had assisted Wright County cities and townships 16 times since August regarding requests such as the Minnesota manufacturing tours, salary survey information, border-to-border broadband grant, letters of support, industrial park expansions, and child care. We've done our 5 monthly newsletters where we feature important information about available jobs, new businesses, scholarships, tuition, and grant programs. We've had ongoing collaboration with Central Minnesota Jobs and Training Services, and we can help Wright County businesses and residents with the ongoing employment needs, and our ongoing collaboration with the Wright Tech Center and some real estate companies, which was a great conversation because of the great need for residential growth in the county that we're seeing. So that was very timely. Upcoming, we have our annual meeting, so I'll let you guys grab one of these if you want, or take a look at them. I think there's just a couple. There's 2 there, but you can. We have our annual meeting coming up on January 19th. it's free for everyone. We have breakfast, we got a keynote speaker, we give away awards to Wright County businesses, and so we'd love for you to join us if possible. Thanks for the couple minutes at the end.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Any questions? All right.
No, she did bring up something else.
Oh, yeah.
There was first children's time, we had that meeting. I haven't heard any feedback.
Oh, that we must have had a
We
meeting
didn't
since
have a
then.
meeting since then.
We had 3 people that came to that meeting.
Okay. That does not work. Okay, thank you, that's all I needed.
They were interested though, so I mean, I think there's a, yes.
Okay.
So hopefully be able to continue to grow the interest before we can move forward with them, but I think that's kind of the plan. I mean, can't sit and hold meetings every five minutes for them, but we can find a time that works for interested parties.
Yeah.
Then we can move forward.
Got it.
So,
I think the big question too is kind of what that entails, like, you know, how many times a month or, you know, what we would even be doing too.
I was involved pretty closely with the Waverly program. The Dane had worked with First Children's Finance, and they created a committee. Their EDA was very active in it, and what they ended up doing was using some of their funds to create grants for individuals looking to start new childcare businesses in town. The numbers turned out that creating a childcare center wasn't probably the best usage of funds for the size of a community, but the home care centers, trying to encourage more home childcare centers through funding availability, is kind of where they ended up. And it was interesting information to receive about exactly how many spaces are available, how old the kids are, kind of an estimate, figure out what the need is.
I mean, for children finance, not willing to work until we have a committee. Is that,
yes, that's,
I mean,
yeah.
individuals can.
Individuals can work, but as far as the
yeah,
city,
as far as the city and the economic development piece of it, they want like a whole team of community.
and then the end goal would be, or maybe the goal would be something that's funded by the city to provide childcare.
I mean,
Is that a thought?
It doesn't have to be funds available, that's just what we really chose to do. I think more or less it was trying to determine like ways to maybe promote childcare accessibility within the community, or look at what the nearest options are to provide what's needed.
Not necessarily owned by the city, the facility.
yeah, that's correct. Yeah, we're not.
You don't know?
No, we're not gonna.
I wouldn't say
No,
that either.
no.
We wanted to get to see about getting more childcare because it's a big need. And then trying to involve some of the businesses and business people and childcare providers to find out how we can make this happen
Yeah.
for the greater good of the community and
Yeah.
business, you know.
So there is funding from the city for a childcare business.
No, I wouldn't say necessarily right now. No, I mean, the Waverly example was they went through the whole process, kind of what we wanna start the process, see what it is, you know, maybe it determines that, yeah, we can, with our growth, see that an actual center would be beneficial here. Or if, you know, we're Waverly settlers, we can just get more in-home daycares.
Right.
Then that's when EDA decided, okay, we'll put this grant together where we'll help. I think it was funding for the licensing.
It was,
Yeah.
I think, and some specific equipment.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So from when we started to when they kind of made a decision on kind of what works for the community, you know, how long kind of
It's
it
at
was?
least a year.
Yeah,
I mean, maybe 2.
You know, that commitment.
Yeah, it was a little while.
Now do I have a motion to adjourn?
Technically, mine's still out there.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned 12:44. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you. So send you an email on 36 lots plus.
We got the good one.
Duration,
Okay.
amount and duration.
But I don't have all the junk that
All right, I'll let you know if I have any questions.
Well, you probably didn't want to see it.
Yeah, yeah.
For
sure. Okay,
I'll
sounds
send
good.
that to you.
Okay.